Hello everyone, my name is India and welcome back to my bookish channel. Today I'm making a video that is part of a series of videos that I'm putting up on my channel about the books that I read this summer, all of the books being queer and written by queer authors. My video today is going to be discussing a theme that I noticed in some of the books that I was reading, the theme of mental health in regards to a character within the story, whether or not that relates to their queerness specifically and their coming out story, or something that is separate or not directly linked to a character's queerness, but is still something that their journey within a book talks about. I want to make a quick disclaimer just to say that I'm not a psychologist or someone who studies human psyche or anything, so these are just some things that I've noticed in what I was reading and would like to share. Normally I would discuss the theme in relation to works in a chronological order, but today I'm going to start with the book that discusses mental health and queerness and young queer people with mental health issues or who are struggling with depression or anxiety, and that is First Spring Grass Fire by Ray Spoon. So this acts almost like a memoir or a fictionalized version of Ray Spoon's life growing up in Canada, realizing that they're queer, and what they find that helps them find comfort and acceptance in and of their queerness. So this book discusses the anxiety and alienation that can come from a person who grows up in an unsafe family home and who has some trauma in their past connected to their family, and also someone who has that sort of background and is realizing that they are not normal or they are not what society expects them to be. Something that I found in this work is that Ray Spoon's sexuality and their mental health are not always connected and aren't joined at all moments of time. There are brilliant passages where it talks about their mental health and what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, and the ways that they choose, or the ways that they find help them cope with the mental health. And they just describe that as being something that's completely separate from their sexuality and the journey that they go through to accept themselves and to find acceptance from others that they care about. This was really cool to read because I think sometimes we can find that queer stories or queer characters in maybe not so much own voices literature can be given or can be lumped in with this idea of mental illness and mental health that is directly related to their sexuality, which isn't to say that there's not any difficulty in being a queer teenager or a queer person in today's society, but also acknowledging that there are individuals who aren't cis or who aren't straight who also experience differing degrees of mental illness that aren't at all related to their sexuality, if that makes sense. Just saying that these two ideas can be intertwined and can be related, but are not always dependent upon one each other. But yeah, the way that this book talks about finding solace in music, in people who are willing to listen to you and understand you, in travel or moving away from a place that is linked to a lot of trauma, was really interesting. The next book is one that I read before this, and that is Angels in America, a Gay Fantasia by Tony Kushner. Now, this is a play that follows characters during the AIDS epidemic in the 80s in America, and discusses things such as grief and the way that a disease can affect someone's mental health and different things such as that. I feel like if I go into more detail, it might border on spoiling things, but just very interesting in this. This book also talks about religion and drug addiction, and yeah, this was phenomenal. The next book I want to talk about is Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan Mcguire. So this book follows characters who have been transported to other worlds, such as, similarly to Alice transporting to Wonderland and Dorothy transporting to Oz. And this follows their stories after they get back or are expelled from these magical places. And this follows a home, kind of for children who are having a difficulty coping with being expelled from these places. This book covers a feeling of alienation, of not being listened to, not being heard. This follows queer characters who experience dysphoria, who experience some acephobia and transphobia, and different things such as that. While Ray Spoon's First Spring Grass Fire talks about how mental health and sexuality can be completely separate and don't always have to do with one of another. This book kind of takes a different approach and focuses on some of the things that maybe a cis-het person wouldn't have to go through, that some queer individuals do experience. The last book I want to talk about is We Are Okay by Nina Lacour. This is about our main character, Marin, who moves away from her home quickly after a death in the family and kind of slowly unfolds the information about this death and different things. This focuses on grief very heavily and the grieving process, especially in young people, which is really beautifully written. I really appreciate books that handle grief and how young people experience grief in a respectful and unique and honest manner. So maybe a bit of a shorter video that's just touching on some topics in comparison to my other one about wealth, in which I elaborated a bit more on the things that I was discussing. I just think that some of the elements of mental health and mental illness inside of these books are also intertwined with really important points of the plot, and therefore would be a bit of spoilers to discuss a little bit more in depth. What I think I really appreciated about all of these books is breaking down the very early concept of queerness and homosexuality as being a mental illness, breaking that down completely, but also showing that queer individuals are not just queer, and giving them multifaceted emotions and stories that are difficult and hard and sad, and going beyond a sad queer love story of two people who can't be together, but of individuals who are having emotions related to their lives, not just related to their sexuality. I found all of that really interesting. Thanks for sticking around. If you have anything to add or would like to comment on in the comments, feel free to do so below, and I'll see you in another video.